Now in this game, they've added a bunch of new factory types as well. This is also why I wanted to be a fascist party, so that I could pick and control what I had. So in here, it'll list all the different kinds of factories, and in this mod in particular, there are multiple types. So I'll refer to the canned food. All of this will produce canned food, but it uses different things. In the vanilla version, you would need a little bit of iron, fish, grain, fruit, and livestock. But in here they got rid of the metal requirement, and they split them up into like the bakery, the fish cannery, the fruit cannery, and where is there we go, the canned food factory, which uses the livestock. So depending on how much you have of each resource, you can customize your food production now. And the same goes with your small arms. So small arms, the normal one, which is the sort of middle tier one, just uses iron, straight up iron. And let's see where the other two are. The early one that you get pretty early on uses bronze, and then the late one uses steel. And I've actually been switching over to the steel ones because I've had it easier to import steel than iron, because everyone else is trying to import iron to make other things. And since steel is more of an end production unit, I've been having a lot easier time getting hold of steel. And with bronze, not too keen on relying on that because you need copper. As you can see, my bronze factory uses up 100 units of my copper. And where's the bronze? There we go. I produce not nearly enough is what I actually need for making things like shoes and some of my machine parts, but I haven't had too much of an issue importing this stuff. Early on you do. It's definitely harder to get bronze because of all of the bronze related things, but now steel is more important as a metal in the later game. And there are some other like new resources that this game added, include lead, which I produce just enough of. Wool has another use. In vanilla, you couldn't make fabric out of wool. Wool was just like a low-end life need for farmers. Now you can actually make fabric out of it. Let's see, that's same. This stuff's the same. Opium is not a new one, but before opium was a luxury good. Now you can use it in pharmaceutical plants, and pharmaceuticals are pretty valuable. Only problem with it is very few regions actually produce opium. There's also a few other ones. I can't remember if things like how much of the telephone, radio, or those might have been from vanilla, but definitely not from vanilla. Like in the mod, they added financial services, they added, pretty sure electric power, and I think either cigars or cigarettes are new. Shoes and boots are definitely part of this mod. They're like clothing, you need a lot of it for your people, but you use leather, which, well, livestock. There's also shares and print as well. So they either added new resources in this mod, or they changed these kind of ways that you can produce these things. Same with the actual like mechanical or the machine parts. There's a lot of different factories that produce different kinds of machine parts. So you have the normal one, which is coal and bronze. You then have where are you? The advanced one, which uses coal, rubber, and steel. You have the iron one, which is coal and iron, and then you have the steel one, which is coal and steel. The advanced one produces more per day based on the resources than the steel one does, but you don't have to rely on rubber. So one of the ways that you can find out where all of your resources are produced is either through looking at the infrastructure, and seeing the icons, or better yet, go to RGO output. You can click on something like oil. And the greener it is, the more it produces in relation to the world. So you can see here that the biggest oil producing place in the world right now is in Ruthenia, right here, which actually currently is its own little nation, but it's would normally be in like southern Poland. Got kicked out of poor Russia. You can see that there's oil over there, there's oil in here, some oil in here, up there, over there, and of course Texas. Texas starts off getting the oil really early on. A few other little bits of oil around here. And then also rubber. Rubber is very regional specific as well, with most being produced right along here. A little bit up here. Rubber doesn't start off as a resource at the beginning, same with oil. It gets discovered over time. Yeah, you can see there's no rubber here. There's a little bit of it in here. None there. A little bit of it gets, well, found within all the tropical wood in Brazil. None up here. None over there. Other specific ones are like tea, which of course is mostly in Asia here. There's a little bit of it that you can grab in some of these other places. And none in America. The other one is silk. This is another very Asian specific resource. You can find that some of it actually pops up in Europe, because historically Europe started finding ways to make their own silk. Again, none over here. It's mostly just in Asia. And I will point out opium as well, because this is why Britain has all of the opium. There's very little opium everywhere else in the world, except for right here. And yeah, the Republic of Britannia, as it is known right now, has pretty much most of the opium production. If I go and hover over here, we see that he produces almost all of it. So if I wanted to make pharmaceuticals, and what would happen is I would be reliant on trading it through Britain. But if Britain decided that he wanted to make pharmaceuticals, he would basically just vacuum up all of the opium that he has, and I wouldn't be able to get any, and I wouldn't be able to produce any. So right now America is actually making all of the pharmaceuticals because they're importing it from the UK, or the Republic of Britannia. And there's a lot of different kinds of resource types. Sulfur was another one that I had mentioned, I spotted in there. And for me in general, I picked Persia because I have a lot of wood, I have lots of coal, got lots of cotton, which is great when you want to make fabric. Fabric is something that's profitable all around. I had a little bit of iron. Over time, these territories started spawning iron, which was very useful since I was running low on it. Also produce a little bit of fruit. Most of it comes from my Indian conquests over here. And I also went into southern Arabia to get more of this stuff. And when I went in to colonize, there's a lot of crazy resource types that you can grab in here that you don't normally find. Definitely wanted to go into Africa because I have no bronze production locally. And where's the lead? Because lead was the other resource that I did not have locally. There's no local lead production, so I'm reliant on importing it. And when I got up this territory, that gave me almost all of the lead that I produce locally now. India is just so resource rich, and you can actually see why. It has to do with populations. The population centers are like here, here, here. I managed to grab a few of them when I was colonizing, but you can see this one I did not get. When you go to colonize, you can only colonize regions at a time. And Britain just went nuts up here. I tried to cut him off, but he managed to get in here. And also get a little bit in here. But I did pretty well holding my colonies together. And yeah, I was looking at whether I could go and grab some more territory in here, but you end up butting heads against Britain, and Britain is massive. It was only until the last like 20 years that Britain just suddenly collapsed. So that's generally one of the ways that you can play this game. I've known people who they don't bother with the economy. They just go laissez-faire. They drop their taxes on the rich, because what'll happen is over here your capitalists and your aristocrats, mostly the capitalists though, they will finance projects to be built. These will either be railroads or factories, and they will either expand factories or build new ones, or if one is closed down they might try to fund it to reopen it. And I will go to foreign investments and show no, not you. Get out of here. There we go. Other Hungary. There we go. You can see here he's got some closed down, so he doesn't allow people to restart his factories. He allows people to upgrade them. I wouldn't want to really pay to upgrade that because he's not getting enough resources to do that, but I could go in here and say he's got a lot of workers, and I could then, you know, get him to build like a canned food factory or something. But if he doesn't have enough horses, then I'd probably just go for something like a bakery, because it just needs grain, and I can do that, plop one of those in, and that will give me investment in Hungary. So when I invest in him, there he is here, and I go to diplomacy. Based on the amount that I've invested, I can also improve my relationship with him, and that will make it easier for me to increase my status with him and eventually maybe sphere him and thus get more control over him. I can ally with him and have him, you know, as a essentially vassal is what sphering does in this game. It's just you can kick people out of a sphere. If I were to go to some of these other sphere, like this guy here, who's a sphere of Britannia, I can increase my influence priority, and once my opinion is high enough, I can remove another great power from his sphere. So I can kick Britain out of his sphere and then put myself into his sphere. And kind of hard because, again, it's Britain. Britain has ridiculous amounts of influence points, but you can pick away at him one at a time instead of trying to go at all of his things. There's also a colonial power point system, which is important when you're establishing colonies, but I've been getting rid of my colonies. I go into population here, and when I find my colonies, I'll click through them and I'll find that, oh hey, in this one I have 2.9 Persians. In this one it's 4.9 Persians, which means a lot of them I can get enough to get the 1% bureaucrats so that I can turn it into a actual state. But it does take time. In some of these places you probably never would be able to get them into a actual state of yours. They'll just stay as a colony and take up your colonial power. But you don't always want these places to become states. You don't want them to have factories, not all of them, simply because when they produce things, like this guy produces grain, wool, and more grain, and that's all stuff that I send to my factories back home, and it's more efficient to have really big factories in one area and then just dump all of your resources into it, which is why it's an imperialism game. Like Britain over here, he just has all of these places sending him resources back home, and then he produces things at a that come out at a higher value that he sells, makes profit off of that, and that's mostly how you would end up playing the economy part of this. And different kinds of things that you can do in here, like with education, you will want to increase your literacy rate. Literacy rate will, especially in this game, allow you to do a lot more. It took me forever to be able to get craftsmen, to be able to get capitalists, simply because my literacy was not high enough. I also could not produce print or shares or banking or financial services because I didn't have enough literacy globally to do that myself, so I had to rely on other countries to do my finances, basically. But that's been keeping me behind. I don't generate as much research points because I don't have enough literacy or enough people who will generate research points. And all of this can, like, one of the best ways to get a lot of literacy is through the reforms here. A social reform called education, because it will give you like plus 50% educational efficiency. You then also go down the tech ones, which give you more educational efficiency. Some other ones will give you educational efficiency as well. So you end up spending a lot of time trying to manage these things. I haven't had any massive revolts as Persia here because I try to manage all my stuff. I haven't been able to gain any infamy because there's just not a lot of opportunities to go to war with people, unless I go to war with someone who's probably gonna kick my butt. And that's because most of my armies are infantry rather than regulars. And regulars, you can see here, have an attack of 4.2, defense of 5.5. These guys, half of that. So that's just because they're not Persians. You can see that my regulars, I can get Farah regulars, which means that they're a accepted culture. These guys might be also accepted as well. Some of these unit types. Oh, wait, this is just where the name is just where they came from, actually. That's why I was like, I don't recall that being a culture. But these guys, they're all Persians. So yeah, you can see they're Persian soldiers, and Persians. While this is a worse type of artillery, it's faster, but not as good as actual artillery. And you can see that it's a different kind of people who are part of that army. So this guy is Pashtun, while this guy is Persian. So generally, if you really want to do well, you want a population that's very high, or you want a lot of people who are your culture or your accepted culture. And there are some events, like if I was in the Sikh Empire, I could your primary culture is Punjabi, but you can get the Sindhi and the Pashtun, I believe. Yeah, you can get the Pashtun and the Sindhi cultures accepted through events that you will find in the decisions. And I really don't have any decisions for that stuff. Like, I can organize territory or form Arabia, which will just create cores. Same with here, it'll just create cores. And that's not too useful for me if I want to get accepted cultures, which is really good when it comes to military. And so I think that's about everything that comes off the top of my head right now. I will just sort of show off naval units, like this is a transport fleet. I've been moving these guys up because this is a 2010 fleet of 20 dreadnoughts and 10 cruisers, and these things are pretty scary. They're not the top tier naval unit, but I don't have the technology to get the oil driven battleships, which I think is, yeah, this one here. If I get this idea, then I will get the ability to build the battleship. So I go to military, I go to navy, and you can see oil-driven ships. I don't have them yet, but I do have dreadnoughts. I can build them. You can only build them from a high enough level port. These ports are basically maxed out level 6 ports, but they're only building dreadnoughts right now. So I'm just gonna call it at that. Lots of crazy history happened. Communist China formed. Japan or the French and British getting their butts kicked by a German American alliance. Canada is a great power with an insanely high industrial power. Mostly because once he got to a great power status, he left the sphere of Britain and he just started immigrating buttloads of people into his factories and started grabbing spheres. And you'll be able to see that with the red here, where Canada has a sphere. See, Canadian sphere there. Canadian sphere. Some British sphere, Canadian sphere. So yeah, Canada's scary. Britain, it's a little interesting. Britain's buddies with the communist Chinese, so fascists and communists, bestest friends. The democratic powers in the world are Germany, America, myself, and Japan and Russia. Though he's not a he's one of them. A democracy. He's a democracy. He's a democracy. I'm also a democracy, even though they elected a fascist faction. We are a democracy. These guys are monarchists, I guess you could say. They have His Majesty government types. Even though they do have elections, they're not considered a full democracy. So I'm allied with Japan, and you can actually find that from the ledger. There's the ledger. Factory production, national ranking. Where is the... It's somewhere where it'll tell you your naval score. Probably past it. Yeah, there you go, ships. So, we're tied in ship numbers, with America being third in terms of ships. The UK basically has no ships. They just lost all of their ships. Russia also does not have any ships as well, so it would be a pretty crazy thing if this were to export into Hearts of Iron, simply because of the state of things. It's just in chaos, and basically it would start with a war between Russia, Germany, America, and Persia over Denmark mostly, and we'd probably win just between Germany and myself. But, you know, big props if America would come in. I'll actually just, because I would pretty much just give America access, and then America would come in here, and hopefully he would come in here. Hopefully America would come to help, instead of just sitting over here. But he might just go and jump across here and invade. I don't know what America would do, and the game ends way too soon before that, so I don't find out. But it would be an interesting alternate history of things. You can see poor Belgium got split. A lot of crazy things are going on in the world here of alternate history. Persia superpower. So, thanks for watching. Perfect Death. Take care.